In this presentation, I'm going to compare two different reading measurements of reading performance for students in grades K to 8. In particular, I'm going to compare the reading ECCBN assessment and the reading Fountas and Pinel benchmark assessment. The reason I chose two measurements of reading performance is that there is clear evidence that regular reading assessments that provide diagnostic information to the teachers and feedback to students could be an important tool in improving reading student achievement that has consequences for learning in all subjects for the student. In both cases, the constraint being measured is reading performance, which is not a simple constraint, and it has several components that become more prominent or less depending on the grade of the student. In particular, both these assessments list as components of the reading performance as components of the constraint they try to measure: letter recognition, phoneme segmentation, reading fluency, reading comprehension, and vocabulary. And as I said, some of these components would be more relevant or less depending on the grade. Starting with the reading ECCBN assessment, is an assessment created by Behavioral Research and Teaching, a research group at the University of Oregon. Its purpose is to identify students for additional instructional support and to monitor over time the effectiveness of that support. And its target population is students in grades K to 8. All items in the reading ECCBN assessment are multiple choice or pass-fail or open responses, or open response items. For example, the student may be asked to identify the name of a letter, and the response is coded as right or wrong. That would be a pass-fail or open response item. All other items are multiple choice. The reading ECCBN assessment reports 6 raw scores that are defined as the number of correct answers given by the student. These 6 raw scores are for phoneme segmentation, knowledge of letter names, knowledge of letter sounds, word reading fluency, passage reading fluency, and comprehension and vocabulary. In some grades there are fewer than 6 raw scores. For example, after 3rd grade, there's no score for knowledge of letter names. Then those raw scores are combined into a non-reference total percentile of score from 0 to 100 and a reading risk level in a scale from 0 to 7. The norming of these scores was done using a stratified random sample of more than 4 million students who had already taken the test by the year 2013-14. The reason that a stratified random sample was used instead of just a simple random sample was to have a sample that was representative of the population that is in grades K to 8 in the United States. The reading ECCBN assessment is recommended to be administered 3 times a year for most students and more frequently for students receiving reading intervention. Based on that large sample of 4 million test takers, there was an analysis of the reliability of the scores for measuring reading performance, and the authors of the study found that the correlations between scores In alternate form of the ECCBN assessment, spaced over space 1 week apart, range from 0.82 to 0.89. That in the reliability literature is considered a strong correlation. And the correlation between scores in retest situations range between 0.79 and 0.82, also a strong correlation. So in this case, the student will take the same test with a few days apart. BRT measure convergent validity of the scores by comparing them to those obtained using other instruments, trying to measure the same constraint. In particular, they compare it to the GMRT and the DBONS. The correlation between ECCBN scores and GMRT range from 0.39 to 0.76 depending on the grade, while the correlation with DBONS scores was much stronger and was always above 0.8 for all grades. That is considered a very strong correlation. The second assessment I'm considering is the Reading, Fountas and Pinnell Benchmark Assessment System, or BAS, created by Irene Fountas and Gay Sue Pinnell at Lesley University in Boston. The purpose of creating this assessment was to determine a student's independent and instructional reading level, decide reading placement levels, and group students for reading instruction, select texts that would be productive for a student's instruction, assess the outcomes of teaching, identify students who need intervention, and inform parent conferences and instruction planning meetings. It's a little different from ECCBN, so the focus is not just in identifying students who need intervention and measure how the intervention has worked or not, but it's more to locate the student in a continuum of literacy skills so that it can be instruction could be adapted to that level, but also it could be used for identifying students who need intervention. The target population again is students in grades K to 8. There's only one item type in the Fountas and Pinnell BAS, and is an interaction between the student and the teacher, where the student tries to read one of 58 short books in the system. 29 are fiction books, 29 non-fiction, and they are labeled according to reading level from the lowest A to the highest Z, and by observing the student trying to read a particular level book, the teacher will assign a reading level to that student. And in practice, what this means is, for example, if the student tries to read a book of level F and can read it independently, but when he or she tries a book of level G, he or she cannot read it independently, then the reading level for the student is determined to be F. The main score reported by the BAS is the reading level obtained in the manner I just described and represented by a letter from A to Z. 3 additional scores are reported that summarize the reading experience of the student in that at that particular level, and those 3 scores are accuracy score, fluency score, and comprehension score. And there's also an extended version of the assessment with additional scores for phonemic awareness, phonics, letter learning, and high-frequency word knowledge. The norming for the BAS was done through a field study that included only 497 students at 22 schools and 13 text administrators. Through this norming, the BAS reading levels are translated into grade equivalent levels, so that, for example, in second grade, if a student is in reading level F, is considered below grade, G is considered at grade, and H is considered above grade. It is recommended that the assessment is administered 3 times a year for most students and more frequently for students receiving reading intervention, same as for ECCBM. Based on the small sample that was used for norming, the authors of the study computed test-retest reliability by comparing 2 reading levels for the same student, one determined using only fiction books and the other by using only non-fiction books. And this estimated test-retest reliability coefficient was 0.97, which is very high, but we have to take into account that is a very limited range of variability that it was measured. Only the difference between fiction books and non-fiction books. The field study for BAS measured convergent validity of the scores by comparing them to those obtained using other instruments trying to measure the same constraint. The correlation of BAS scores with those obtained using 3 other assessments ranged from 0.42 for the degrees of reading power scores in non-fiction to 0.94 for the reading recovery assessment and for fiction reading. Both the ECCBM and the BAS are reliable and valid assessments that provide a large amount of diagnostic information. The main differences is that BAS takes longer, actually costs more, so you combining the time and the cost is more expensive, but it provides more personalized information, like a reading level that indicates what books the student is able to read, while ECCBM concentrates in providing a ranking of students in terms of need for intervention. That's its main goal, and that's what it concentrates on. So in summary, ECCBM is a preferable assessment of reading performance in grades K to 8 if cost is an important limiting factor, or the information is going to be used to allocate resources among students, while BAS is preferable if the information is going to be used to personalize instruction for each student. And these are the 2 references for the reliability and validity studies for each of the assessments.